So today's talk is going to be on this cogent statement of knowledge and ideas. So there are different themes which are being presented on the same topic, and what has been assigned to me was this cogent statement of knowledge and ideas, and this of course is in Indian astronomy. I would be presenting my talk under 5 distinct themes. Okay, so if you just see, I will start with a very broad introduction to this. In that, I will talk about the purpose of astronomy as visualized by Indian astronomers and has been stated by the astronomers in their texts. This is one part. Then I will also touch upon the antiquity of this. Then I will broadly classify the kind of astronomical works that we have, and then I will take you through some distinct and unique features that you find in Indian astronomy. See, this distinct and unique features has to be understood because astronomy as a science has been practiced in several civilizations. What is so unique about this Indian tradition? Okay, Bharatiya Jyotish Shastra as they call it. And there I will introduce you to the notion of Tithi, Yuga and so on, which are sort of unique. Then there is another interesting feature which we need to notice. Every astronomer has been very categorically stating that his presentation of the astronomical calculations may not necessarily be valid for all times. This is a very, very important thing that we need to understand as students of science. So, any sort of claim that we make is based on certain understanding that we have at a given point of time, whether it is in the domain of social sciences or in the domain of medical sciences or even in the domain of physical sciences. So, this the need for refining the parameters that have been the need for refining the parameters. After all, in working with any system, we have certain parameters to handle with, and these parameters are generally variables. There may be certain constants, but most of them are variables, and these variables have to be periodically refined by us based on the kind of understanding that we have evolved. So, this is a very remarkable thing that I find in the Indian astronomy, that they have clearly realized that this is not something which we can declare forever. And we all know that irrespective of the dimensions that we are dealing with, whether it is the cosmology that we are dealing with or something which has to do with the terrestrial thing or at a much smaller level, so there is nothing which is sort of unique or constant. Even for instance, this spinning of the earth, how long does it take? 24 hours. Spinning of the earth as such, it's not exactly 24 hours, it is slightly less than that, close to 4 minutes less. But this itself is actually changing over a period of time. And when I talk about the time here, it need not be necessarily 10 years or 15 years, but it could be something like 1500 years, 2000 years. And there are people who are working. So these are certain things which have to be periodically measured by us. And based on the observation that we make, we may have to refine things. So these are very important things that have been understood by these people. So that is one aspect which I will be touching upon towards the end of my talk. And of course, one of the important discoveries that has been made in the Indian astronomy. So, and its reception, that is from the viewpoint of history. Coming to the purpose of astronomy. The purpose of astronomy has been clearly enunciated. So what is purpose of Ayurveda? So that will be enunciated. What is purpose of Vyakarana? Purpose of Vyakarana? Of course, so what we need to understand is, it is just to understand what are the right usages. Okay, primarily whether the usage that has been made is correct or not. When it comes to Ayurveda Shastra, how to actually maintain the health. Okay, Swasthya Samrakshanam. So that is the prayojana. Similarly, when it comes to astronomy, Swasthya is something which we are blessed with. How to keep it, okay, not lose it. So that is the purpose of Ayurveda. So similarly in astronomy, so this has been clearly stated as Digdesha Kala Jnanam. You see towards the end of the slide, Digdesha Kala Jnanam. Okay. So what does this mean? Dik Jnanam, Desha Jnanam and Kala Jnanam. Dik Jnana means you want to know the east-west direction. So is there something to be done, or is it something which is known to you? To know the east-west. So let us assume that sun rises. Now, does the sun rise in the same point? Not, right? So if you have seen the shadow of the grills in your house, sometimes it will be falling that side, sometimes it will be falling this side, right? So what does that mean? That means the shadow cast by the rays of the sun are changing their direction. So shadow cast changes its direction means sun himself changes the direction. So that is what we actually call as Uttarayana and Dakshinayana, right? Motion towards the north and motion towards the south. So suppose there is an east point, okay, assume that this screen that you are seeing here is the exact east, then sun will be moving towards the south for some time and then returning back and then going to the north and then returning back, right? So this is what is happening. So this northward and southward motion of the sun does not enable you to know what exactly the east, and therefore we need some way to find out east. So this is what is called Digjnanam. Next is Deshajnanam. So Deshajnanam means you need to know where exactly you are on the earth. So it is very important, because then only I will know when exactly the sun will rise, when exactly the sun will set. We all know that the duration of the day keeps changing all through the year, right? So if you go to Moscow, if you go to Edinburgh, so which has some 45 degrees latitude, okay, in India you have only up to something like 30-degree latitude. Okay. So the sunrise would have taken place in Chennai, but it might not have taken place in Calcutta or Kharagpur, right? So this may take at a later point of time because of the high latitude. And if you go further, the sun may never even set. So if you go to some places, okay, like 55 degrees and above, so the sun never even sets for some period and sun never even rises for some other period. So we need to know where exactly we are. So what is the duration of the day and so on. We need to know, that is what is meant by Desha, latitude of the place. Then of course Kala Jnana. Kala is at any point of time, what exactly the time is. So today we have some clocks like atomic clocks and so on. But then in those days, people did not have these kind of clocks. Even if they had some sort of a clocks, okay, some devices to measure time, that cannot be afforded by everybody. Everybody cannot have a big huge setup to know the exact duration of time. So people had very simple techniques of watching where the sun is or looking at the shadow and then determining the time. So the shadow of something itself gives you a clue to know what exactly the time is. Okay, this is something which we need to understand. But the shadow of any object, you can think of stone, you can think of pen, you can keep a pole, and then if you keep following that, in a short period of time you will know. In a short means at least 1 or 2 years, or if somebody teaches you within a few months you will know. If any of you had visited this Jantar Mantar, have you? Where? Jaipur? Delhi? Yes, Jaipur. Okay. So there they would have kept something, a pencil kind of a thing, which will point, some shadow will be there, and then you will exactly know what the time is. So the shadow of a small device, so once you know the technique to determine, you will know the exact time. This time is what we call as local time. When I say local time, so even between Calcutta and say Gujarat, okay, so there is a huge distance of separation, right? So the sun would have risen in Calcutta, whereas it would not have happened in Gujarat. But then we have some IST, Indian Standard Time, for the whole nation. So we need to know the exact time at the locality where we are. So this also is an important component which is actually done. So the purpose of astronomy is Digdesha Kala Jnana. This is one aspect. The other aspect is I also need to know the time because I would like to travel. Okay, so from India to Indonesia, from India to somewhere else, Arabian country. So for all this we need to know the time. For harvesting we need to know. For various reasons we need to know the time. For performing rituals I need to know the time. So when there is Uttarayana I want to perform some ritual. When there is Makara Sankranti I want to perform some ritual. When exactly it happens during the year. So how do I determine Deepavali? When to celebrate? So for all this we need to know the time. Okay. Okay. Where exactly this Jyotish Shastra falls? In fact, we have a certain injunction. It says, Brahmanena Nishkaranena Shadango Vedodhyeyo Jneyascha. This is an important injunction. So we need to know one of the Vedangas, also, which is called Jyotisha 2. Shadangaha Vedaha means Veda along with its ancillary texts. Shiksha, Kalpa, Chandar, Jyotish, Vyakaran, Nirukta. Okay. Shiksha, Vyakaranam, Kalpaha, Niruktam, Jyotisham, Tatha. If you do, so in that order, then there is a rhythm, right? So that is how people try to compose in verses. So Shiksha, Vyakaranam, Kalpaha, Niruktam, Jyotisham, Tatha. Okay. So these are 6 angas. Now this Jyotisha is one of the angas, that is all I wanted to tell you. So this injunction that people had to know, okay. So if not master the entire discipline, at least to some extent. It is like everybody studying mathematics till 10th standard. So till 10th standard you know certain basic things with which you will be able to lead something, irrespective of the discipline that you choose. So similarly we need to know some social science, some environmental science, some physical science. So it is in this sense the Shadanga is known by everybody. Okay. I will not explain all the Shadanga now, what it means, but one of them is Jyotisha, some basic knowledge of astronomy is taught to every individual. Okay. Okay. Now, where does the Shadanga fall? In fact, Veda as well as Shadanga falls under, yesterday Mahadevan was mentioning during his talk, this Chaturdasha Vidyasthana. So there is a verse which says Puranan Nyayamimamsa Dharma Shastranga Mishritaha Vedasthanani Vidyanam. This to some extent gives the kind of corpus of knowledge that was available with us. It is not comprehensive, but it is something which broadly describes the various disciplines. So we have Purana, of course, in that itself we have Ashtadasha. So Nyaya yesterday we saw, okay. So we had a glimpse of this Nyaya Shastra earlier. Mimamsa is again two classes, Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa, okay. Mimamsa is basically the term means Pujita Vicharaha. Pujita Vicharaha means a discussion which is respectable discussion. So suppose you keep fighting with each other. So he is the best politician, he is the best politician, etc. This doesn't mean anything, right? So these are all some talks, gossips which we engage with. He is the best actor, she is the best actor, and so on. This Pujita Vicharaha is something which is of higher dimension, okay. So anyway, deeper dimension, deeper thoughts. So that is what is Mimamsa. Dharma Shastranga Mishritaha. Okay. So this Anga Mishritaha means 6 Angas, Vedaha. So that is how you have the number 14. And of course, then we add Ayurveda, Dhanurveda, Gandharva Veda, and so on and so forth. Anyway, so the point is, this is Anga Vedanga, as Vedanga Jyotisha seems to be a very old discipline. So what is the antiquity? Yesterday you might have noted that I was mentioning to you a short passage from Chandogya Upanishad, which goes as dialogue between Sanat Kumara and Narada, where the discipline of Nyaya was mentioned, and the discipline of Jyotisha is also mentioned there by a different name. The name is Nakshatra Vidya. Okay. If you see, so Daivam Nidhim Vako Vakyam Ekayanam Deva Vidyam Brahma Vidyam Bhuta Vidyam Kshatra Vidyam Nakshatra Vidyam. See, Sarpadeva Jana Vidya. So this Nakshatra Vidya refers to this Jyotish Shastra. Okay. So this is a old discipline. This is the scriptural reference that we have. Scriptural reference that gives the antiquity of this discipline. Then there is another interesting thing which has been noted by an important scholar of 18th century. So at the turn of 19th century, okay, just around that time, so some scholar called John Playfair, he was a mathematician, physicist, astronomer, all sort of put together, a wonderful scholar. So he was quite interested in knowing the kind of calculation that had been done by Indian astronomers. So this is around 200 years, 220 years before. So he was actually puzzled at the extraordinary precision with which Indians could compute around that time. I am talking about in those days where we did not have the theory of astronomy or even the Newton's laws, physics, etc., well established. So every society has been trying to make some sort of a computation. After all, keeping track of time is essential for every society. They do that. In their own ways, they had developed some model and they have been computing. So we had Islamic civilization which has been doing in one way, we have Chinese civilization doing in a different way, we have Greek civilization doing in a different way. Every society has been doing differently. And even the Mexican society, Babylonia, they had been doing. So in those days, so people were always curious to know what the other civilization was doing, and it was not accessible. It was accessible only to a few scholars, and these scholars, when they actually move from place to place, they try to gather as much information as possible and then they study. So one of the interesting studies that has been made by John Playfair, and he came up with an article which is called see the title, On the Astronomy of the Brahmins. So this he writes in 1790. So there is a very long article, around 45-50 pages, and what he does is, so he was quite puzzled and wondering how these astronomers have been able to do this computation fairly accurately, which was invariably giving far more accurate results. So he makes three hypotheses. The first hypothesis is it is all by pure coincidence, right? That is one possibility. So you see something and then it could be by chance it may happen. But then this possibility has to be ruled out because repeatedly if everything comes out correctly, so it can't be by coincidence, right? So if you do not know the subject matter, so if you are answering MCQ, one question by luck you may get, but you will not be able to get the entire score, okay, by luck. So if you score 100%, it only means that you have studied, you have understood the subject matter. So therefore it can't be pure coincidence, it has to be abandoned. Then the second thing that he says is, there must have been a Newton among the Brahmins to discover the universal principle and so on. So once you have understood the universal principle, you may be able to use the laws of motion to determine. But that is also not there. So because we are talking about much antiquity, okay, much earlier period. And the third thing is, observations were made in India when all Europe was barbarous and uninhabited. And those made in the Europe 5000 years afterwards come in mutual support. Okay. So this third hypothesis seems to be quite acceptable, and that is what he says is possible. So this is an important observation. The reason I am saying is, earlier I was giving you a textual evidence where this Nakshatra Vidya means essentially trying to study the motion of objects in the background of stars. Okay, that is what is Jyotish Shastra. So Nakshatra Vidya, that is a textual reference. Here there is a computational aspect which comes in, and based on the accuracy with which one is able to do the prediction. So this scholar is trying to come to the conclusion that unless this kind of observation is made for so long a period, it may not be possible to reach this kind of accuracy, and therefore he makes the supposition that people should have been observing for 5000 years, right? So that is something which you have to keep in mind. After all, when we make certain observations, so how accurately can we measure? It is absolutely impossible, particularly those objects. So you can only make some estimate, and you have to keep refining those things. That is what I hinted by saying refining the parameters. Okay. So this is something which we need to keep in mind. And of course, many times people do confuse this astronomy with astrology. So this astrology has nothing to do with this observation as such and noting down the details. In fact, people have been both. Okay. But nowadays, it is completely segregated. But discipline wise also one should understand. Astrology has to do with making certain suppositions that this is likely to happen based on the positions. But how do you determine the positions is what is the domain of astronomy. How do you get the positions? Based on the positions, what do you predict, etc., is the domain of astrology. They two are completely different. Okay. So here there is an interesting verse. Bhojyam yatha sarvarasam vinajyam rajyam yatha raja vivarjitancha sabhanabhativa suvakrihina golanabhijño ganakastathatra. This is a very important principle which has been stated in this verse. So he is giving three similes. Gola anabhijñaha in the fourth quadrant, what he says is Golanabhijñaha ganakaha tathatra, fourth quarter of the verse. Golanabhijñaha means those who do not know how the mathematical framework is described. Okay, Gola means the spherical motion and so on. Anabhijñaha, abhijñaha means an expert. Anabhijñaha means who does not know. Ganakaha, Ganakaha means one who simply knows how to do this computation. Even astrology requires some sort of a computation. Okay, but not knowing how these motions are happening in the celestial sphere, If one simply tries to make some calculations and then make some prediction, then that person is like this. So he gives three similes. Bhojyam yatha sarvarasam vinajyam. Okay, you cook but without ghee. Okay, तो वो तो स्वाद नहीं होता है ना. मिठाई बनाते हैं तो उसमें घी नहीं डालेगा तो क्या होगा, right? So this is not, this is one example. Rajyam yatha raja vivarjitancha. There will be only anarchy. There is no ruler. Everybody becomes, okay, ruler for himself. So how will the Rajya be? Sabhana bhativa subhaktrihina. There is an assembly, every people, okay, everybody in the assembly is looking after, okay, some good speaker. कोई अच्छा बात करने वाला नहीं है. So it will be a real headache, right? So sabhana bhativa suvaktrihina. So similarly, golanabhijna. So it essentially tries to convey to you that it is like, even as teachers we should know, unless we have a strong hold of the subject that we are teaching, it is not going to be an effective teaching. It is just wasting the time, all resources. So even if we do not equip ourselves during our course of study, we should try to equip ourselves, okay, when we are teaching. So it is very important. So that is what he is trying to say. Anyway, there are a few other important things also. Not everybody cannot become can become an astrologer. See, you see the kind of things that are listed here. See, he has to be pure, efficient, bold, eloquent, possessed with genius and ready wit, knower of time and place. These are the qualifications which Varahamihira is listing, okay, for anybody to consider himself even an astrologer. See, these all stated. Tatra gunaha suchir dakshaha pragalbho vagmi pratibhanavan deshakalavit satvikaha. So many qualities are expected. Okay. Okay. Now, what was the need for a calendrical system? So Panchanga is the general term that we use. So there is a verse which even nicely brings it out, even in Vedanga Jyotisha. Veda hi yajnartham abhipravrittaha kalanupurvya vihitascha yajnyaha tasmadidam kalavidhana shastram yojyotisham veda saveda yajnam. What it says. So the primary purpose of Veda is yajnartham abhipravrittaha. So this yajna does not mean just taking some dravya and then putting on to fire. Even this, what is happening is yajna only. Okay. So Veda hi yajnartham abhipravrittaha means the primary purpose of Veda is to serve this. Kalanupurvya vihitascha yajnaha. All these yajnas are to be performed in time. Okay. So that is why Ruchi is Richa, sorry. So he is asking you to sign exactly on time. Okay. So you can't just come as you like. So kalanupurvya vihitascha yajnaha. Tasmadidam kalavidhana shastram. Okay. This Jyotisha is considered as kalavidhana shastram, a discipline which will give you the exact time. Okay. So Kalavidhana Shastram, and therefore Yo Jyotisham Veda Saveda Yajnam. Okay. So the importance of this has been nicely conveyed. And of course, even a 19th century astronomer in Orissa called Samanta Chandrasekhara, at the beginning of his text, brings in a very beautiful idea. He says, Naste kalavayava kalana yatra drikshastra siddha shrauta smarta vyavaharitirapi chidyate tatra dharmaha. So he says, dharmaha chidyate means without knowing the time, okay, everything will go astray. See, whether it is money transaction, money lending also, you have to exactly know the number of days that has happened. So you find all sorts of problems there. Okay, how much of interest I have to pay, etc. For all this, you need to keep count. Okay, dharmaha means all kind of dharma will get shattered if you do not have the count of the number of days. So which is essentially time in some sense. Now, I move on to the second thing, the types of astronomical works. So we have different classes of texts. So, they are broadly divided into Siddhanta, Tantra and Karana. These are the names. So, for instance, if you know, Bhaskaracharya's work is called Siddhanta Shiromani. There is something called Vateshwara Siddhanta and so on. So, Siddhanta here does not mean the final position and so on. If at all it can be understood that way, so it has to be understood as final position at a given point of time. Okay, it is not forever. So, this is the final position given by this person at a given point of time. Okay. So, this Siddhanta, of course, this is one way of understanding the title. Tantra, Karana, Tantra is basically sort of techniques and Karana is a different class of text. I think the later people, Dr. Mahesh and Professor Sriram, may be explaining in greater detail about these kinds of things. But I wanted to just tell you that these are different classes of texts. But besides that, there are other class of texts called Koshtaka, Vakyani and so on. So, what are they meant for? I will just explain from the next slide. So, these class of texts serve different purposes. So, this you have to just keep in mind, okay, broadly. So, different kinds of texts are written for different kinds of people, right? Even so, if you want to understand a particular subject, so at an introductory level you study something, at a deeper level you study something. If you want to make it easy, so then there are certain other things which are also written down. So, similarly there are different kinds of texts which are authored, and it also has to do with the time period that has been chosen, okay, by the author of the text. What is of interest is this Vakya. See, this Vakya, I don't know how many of you have heard of this Vakya Panchanga. Have you heard? Any of you? No? There is something called Drik Panchanga. You have heard of Drik Panchanga? Yeah, there are so many people. So many. Yeah, Madhura Krishnamurti Shastri, who was in Rajamandri. So there are various people have come. So there are some Drik Panchangas here which are brought out. There is something called Vakya Panchanga. This Vakya Panchanga is something which is of very interesting origin. So it is essentially this kind of Vakyas. Any of you have listened to this Vakya? Gir Nashreyaha, Dhena Vashrihi, Rudrastu Namyaha, Bhagohi Ajya, Dhanyaya Nari. You don't know? Okay. At least in South India, in Tamil Nadu, we used to say this at least once in a year. Not fully, at least the beginning. So it is essentially a set of numbers. Girna Shreyaha refers to the number which is there in the numerical value. In Katapayadi system, it will translate to that. So Girna Shreyaha, what does it literally mean? The Sanskrit scholar. Girna Shreyaha. तुम संस्कृत पढ़ाती हो ना? वो लड़की कहाँ है? हाँ. Gihi Naha Shreyaha. Three words are there. Vani, Asmakam, Shivakarta. Very good. So this is what it means. Gihi Naha Shreyaha. Right? Then Dhyanavashrihi. Dhyanavaha Shrihi means cows are our wealth. Okay? Rudrastu Namyaha. Rudra used to be worshipped. Okay? There are some Vakyas like this. So these Vakyas are meaningful sentences, so that you will be able to memorize them. So they also serve the purpose of teaching very important values in life, okay, worldly wisdom and so on. They are nicely put in the form of numbers. This is an interesting exercise that they have done. And once you memorize these Vakyas, you will be able to compute the moon's longitude on any time, on any day. You don't need to do any other thing. You commit the Vakyas to memory, okay, on any day you will be able to exactly say where the moon is. So this is a very, very interesting thing that they have done, okay. And why did they do this? So because you will be able to immediately come up. See, after all, the position of the moon is what actually dictates. So you don't know. So if you see the position of the moon, you know the tithi, right? So you don't need to do any other thing. The Ramanavami, Gokulashtami and so on. It all essentially has to do with the moon's position with respect to the sun's position. This is something which is observable. Okay, you see the face of the moon and then you tell the tithi. So this moon's position is something which is very important, and therefore to enable the entire society, okay, to do the computation roughly, so they had come up with very interesting techniques. Okay, this is about the classification of the text. Now what are the distinct and unique features of this Indian astronomy? I will tell you that I will start with some interesting verses here. They have been worried about this question which would have been posed by some student. Okay, suppose I take this water bottle, I drop product, it just falls. Okay, any heavy object keeps falling. So earth is a heavy object. So how does it not fall? So this is some general question that it may arise to anybody. So all objects keep falling down. So why not earth fall? So therefore some people said, see, if the child asks some question, then you will immediately try to come up with some sort of an answer. Okay. So even if the child falls, so you will say we will beat the earth, right? So the child will be little happy. Okay. So this is the kind of a thing, some sort of answer would have been given for some general consumption. So people have said, see, the tortoise is supporting the earth, this is supporting the earth, and so on. Now the astronomers ask this question, if the tortoise were to support, then what supports the tortoise? Right? So you can't say this answer. So therefore he is saying, Kamathadivi Rudrita Mahiyadi Te Kena Dhritaha Nabhasthitaha. Kamatha is tortoise. Kamathadibhi means etc. Suppose you suppose something. Then Udhrita Mahiyadi, then what supports them? So if they can stand on their own, then why not earth? This is the kind of answer that has been sort of provided. Okay. There is yet another interesting thing which has been provided by Bhaskaracharya. So he talks about Akrishta Shaktischa Mahitayayat Khastham Gurum Swabhimukham Swashaktya Akrishyate Tat Patativa Bhati Same Samantat Kwa Patat Viyam Khe. This is yet another interesting way of looking at it. Bhaskaracharya cannot compose this verse without having a much broader picture of what is happening all around the globe. See, whether you are in Chennai or you are in Delhi or you are in Kharagpur, at least they would have known that everywhere this is the phenomenon that is happening. Right? Akrishyate, okay, means tat patativa bhati. And this is something which has to be true for every part of the earth. Right? Whether you are in Moscow or you are in California. So they knew that clearly that the earth is spherical in shape, and that is known several thousands of years before. And once you know this, so this is phenomenon which is happening everywhere. So he proposes Akrishta Shaktischa Mahi is what he is saying. Mahi means Prithvi. So Prithvi has the power to attract things towards itself. After all, that is all you have to suppose, right? If something falls down, then there is a power of attraction. If a magnet attracts an iron piece, you say that magnet has the power of attraction. And we generalize to people also, he has the power to attract. So, Akrishta Shaktischa Mahi. And therefore, because of that power, so then he says, Khastham Gurum Swabhimukham Swashaktya. Khastham, the word Kha means space. Khastham Gurum means a heavy object. Swabhimukham Swashaktya, it attracts. Akrishyate tat patativa bhati. Then he says, so this makes us feel that things are falling down. Understand? So you just imagine two observers on two sides of the earth, diametrically opposite. For him this is falling down. For the same observer that is falling up, right? Going up. If on the other side he wants to visualize. So therefore he is making the statement patativa, as if it falls down. Okay? And if this is something which is happening everywhere around the globe, then why would we expect the earth to fall anywhere? This is the kind of argument that he presents. Okay. Now, the time periods which are stated in Indian astronomical texts are huge. See, it is of the order of 43,20,000 years. This is what you call as the Mahayuga, and 1,000 times that is what is called as Kalpa. See, some of you who would have read this Bhagavad Gita, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Maharyat Brahmano Viduhu Ratrim Yuga Sahasrantam Teho Ratra Vido Janaha is there in the 8th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Anyway, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam, when he talks about, it is this Kalpa which he is talking. Sahasra means 1,000, Yuga is 43,20,000 years. So this is a large period which has been conceived of. I just wanted to just tell this to you, just to make you appreciate that these huge numbers, very large periods has been conceived of quite long back. Okay, very large period of this order has been conceived of very long back. On the other hand, if you look at other traditions, for instance Anno Mundi, so they just conceive of only thousands of years. Okay, not of the order, it is 10 to the 6 times, 10 to the 7 times more than what other civilizations could conceive of in those periods. What is the basis for this division of time? This is an interesting question that has been posed. So there is a nice verse in Aryabhatiya, Yuga Varisha Masa Divasaha Samam Pravrittastu Chaitra Shukladehe Kaloya Manadyanantaha Grahabhairanumiyate Kshetre. This is an interesting position that they have taken. Kaloyam Anadyanantaha, from the viewpoint of philosophy. The time is something which does not have a beginning, which does not have an end. Right? Kaloyam Anadyanantaha. If it is Anadi Ananta, then how do you make divisions in time? Okay? Anadyananta. After all, there has to be some phenomenon which makes this commences. Right? So, this commencement of time or even dividing this time, so this 4th quarter of the verse, Grahabhairanumiyate, is a very interesting statement. Grahabhaihi means Graha refers to planet, Bham refers to stars. Okay. Bhambhe Bhani in Sanskrit, Bha means star. Bham. Grahabhaihi means, so Grahihi Bhaischa. So the division of time that we have has to do with the motion of these planets in the background of the stars. Nothing more than that. Motion of stars and motion of planets, or motion of planets in the background of the stars. You can either way you can conceive of. Both can be conceived of also. Yesterday I was mentioning to you that in Vatsyayana commentary, in Anumana, you may recall, he was mentioning Deshantara Gamanam and Gati. Deshantaravasthiti and Gati, they are correlated, right? So this motion of objects is detected only by saying that they are moving. See, the motion is detected because of change in position. Okay. Now it is the change in position that actually makes us keep track of time. What are these two objects? In fact, sun and the moon are the primary objects which are our timekeepers. Nothing else, not the atomic clock, not the digital clock. Okay. So we have to be very clear. All these atomic and digital clocks are set to the motion. So if there is going to be a small change in the spin of the earth, then all the clocks that we have has to be abandoned. We have to design a new set of clock. So we can't be tuning our activities based on these clocks. We will only tune our activities based on these two illuminating objects. So the seasons that are there, and the seasons has to do with the one motion of the sun around the earth or the motion of the earth around the sun today, as we understand. And even the shorter durations of time that we have, whether it is a month or a tithi or a nakshatra, whatever we have has to do with the motion of these objects. That has been beautifully stated by Aryabhata in this single verse. The Yugavarsha Masa Divasaha. Whether you conceive of a huge period like 43,20,000 years, Varsha, much smaller unit of time, Masa, much smaller, Divasa, a day, whatever be the unit of time, they have to do with the motion of these objects as observed by us. Okay, this is a very important thing. Yugavarsha Masa Divasaha Samam Pravrittastu Chaitra Shukladehe. Actually, Kaloya Manadyanantaha, but the divisions of time, okay, this itself is a very interesting topic, okay, if we let our mind think. So Grahabhaihi Anumiyate is also an important thing. It is something which is inferred by us. Okay. Time is something which is perennially flowing, but we infer based on some phenomenon which is happening, that a year has passed, 20,000 years have passed, 5,000 years have passed. Okay, so 228 days and 18 hours have passed, whatever it is. Okay, this is something which is inferred. It is a very profound statement. Okay, what constitutes an year? Anybody? How will you say year is over? Not January 1 to January 1. That doesn't make any sense. The earth completes its rotation around the sun, its revolution around the sun. Revolution, right? It has rotation and revolution. Okay, let me ask you, how do you know that earth is revolving around the sun? By seeing the change in position of the sun, you will only say that sun is moving around the earth. Yes. Seasons doesn't help. Shabda Pramana. But Shabda should have its basis on Pratyaksha. See, any Shabda will not be valued. Shabda which is based on Pratyaksha will be valued. No, Aptastu Yathartha Vakta, but Yathartha is only by his Darshana. See, Pratyaksha is something which is inviolable. We have to understand this. Yesterday I was trying to convey to you that important point. Any phenomenon that will help you in knowing that earth is going around the sun. Think about it. So people did not have any mechanism to know that you are actually moving around the sun. You also have no mechanism to know that you are in a spinning frame. Okay, from a theoretically simpler viewpoint, one can think of that we are in a spinning frame instead of making the entire thing spin. Anyway, those things have been, maybe Mahesha will cover, I don't know, but I am not going to talk about all that. So this is just to build you something. So the point I want to convey is, you recognize the motion of an object in the background of some fixed frame. This should be clear to you. Okay, change in position can be detected only if there is a fixed frame and something is moving with reference to that fixed frame. Now, how do you understand the motion of the moon? There is a fixed frame which is provided. What is that fixed frame? Stars. Understand? So the relative positions of stars are fixed. So in that fixed frame, you recognize the motion of the moon, you recognize the motion of the sun, and so on. Now, You are the observer. So just to have a feel for how do we understand the phenomenon. So you are standing somewhere on the surface of the earth which is spherical in nature, and the point right above you is called zenith. Okay. And so earth is spinning, so there is something called north pole. So you determine the directions and so on. So the observation is made. So there is a term called horizon. Are you familiar with that? What is horizon? So it is horizon basically means a tangential plane. Okay, assume this. Suppose this is spherical. Okay, so this is the horizon. Okay, a tangential plane at the location of the observer. Okay, on a spherical ball it will be like that. So suppose for this, suppose this is we don't have a spherical object. This is my can make my hand. So this is the horizon here. Suppose some fellow is sitting here, this will be the horizon for him. A tangential plane at the location of the observer. Okay, that is what is horizon. So only when something rises above the horizon you can see. So below that you cannot see. So that is very important. So and this is actually called Kshitija in Sanskrit. Okay, Kshitija means something which is born out of earth. Okay. So this anyway, this is the term that they use, and there is something called Dhruva. Many of you, I don't know if you have performed the marriage in some traditional manner, they will make you see something called Dhruva Tara. Anyway, so there is something called pole star which is supposed to be fixed and so on. Now this is I am giving you this only to make you feel this motion of objects as seen from the earth. Okay, so here you see earth at the center, and then I have drawn a circle, and this circle, one circle is called the equator, the other circle is called ecliptic. You see these two circles in the, so this equator that I have drawn is basically, so you imagine a huge sphere around you, so you blow out our equator and that huge sphere. Okay, so you imagine a huge sphere, so our equator if you blow out it will go and meet that one, right, and that is what you call a celestial equator. Now as the earth is sort of spinning, as we know today, the earth is spinning. Now the motion of the sun is not happening along the equator, it is happening in a circle which is inclined to the equator. Okay, that is the other circle which we have shown. Earlier I was mentioning to you Uttarayana, Dakshinayana. So the sun is, see, so I show this, cursor is seen there. See, suppose the sun is here, so it just keeps moving like this. Mesha, Vrishaba, Mithuna, Karkataka, Simha, Kanya, Tula, Vrishika, Dhanur, Makara, Kumbha. These are the 12 Rashis. Okay, so each having around 30 degrees. 30 degrees into 12, you have 360. So when the sun is here, you say the year begins at the beginning of Mesha. So when the sun comes back once again after going one round, you say 1 year is over. So you will have seasons like this. See, suppose the sun is here at the top, so it will be summer for you. Okay, for people in the northern hemisphere. Suppose the sun is here, okay, so it will be winter. Now where is the sun in this diagram? Anybody can tell? So we are now in November. In which Rashi? See somewhere here, right? So it is yet to go down. Okay. So around mid-April it will be here at the beginning of Mesha. It just keeps traveling and it comes back. So the time taken by the sun to travel this segment of 30 degrees is what you call as a solar month. So moon is close to this star today, will be close to some other star. Even if you see in one night, see the moon's motion you can see. If you focus the telescope, see within a short time you will see that the moon is out of the frame. So you have to rotate the telescope, which means moon is moving with respect to stars. Similarly, they observe the sun to be moving. The earth is at the center and the sun is moving around me like the moon is moving around me. So I will just say sun starts its motion here, completes Mesha Rashi, goes to the next Rashi, goes to the next, goes to the next, and that is what I observe. Like the moon. मून को स्टार के पास देखा, थोड़ी देर के बाद उधर देखता हूँ, थोड़ी देर के बाद उधर देखता हूँ. वो तो होता है एक महीने में 27 days. तो सन तो होता है एक साल में. So anyway, we will discuss this later. So as far as observations are concerned, okay. See, if it were so simple, then people would have found long back. So we needed sophisticated devices. Natural eye cannot by any means figure out that the earth is moving around the sun. Naked eye observations have limitations. Okay. So when you see a screen in a theater, there are different frames are moving, right? But you don't see the frames to be moving. Why? It is the limitation of the eye. So certain speeds can be detected, certain speeds cannot be detected. Change cannot be detected. So the resolution that the eye has is not sufficient for us to know that the earth is moving around the sun, revolving around the sun. Impossible. Only after telescope was found, so the resolution with which you can observe things improved, and it is only after that we were able to know this. Anyway, that is a different thing, but that is not required for us to do all these computations. It is only a relative motion, so you can do everything quite accurately even with the other frame. Okay. Now this other thing, in the previous slide I showed you, this is S4 is what is called. So today we call it as winter solstice, and the top point S2 is called summer solstice, and S1 and S3 will be called as equinoxes. Okay. So this motion from S4 to S2 is what is called Uttarayana, and the other is called Dakshinayana. Now, so this is something which has to do with longer duration year. When the sun completes all the 12 rashis, a year is over. When the sun completes one motion, okay, around that rashi, 1 month is over. This is solar month. When it comes to our practical observation, one can ask this question. As far as moon is concerned, I can see how close the moon is to the star. Okay, because you can see moon and the star together. Can you see sun and the star together? Then how do you know that sun is moving? Previous? आपको फोटो खींचना है? ये स्लाइड तो दे दूंगा. No need. As long as you are attentive, it is fine with me. ये ज्ञान तो विनिमय के लिए है. Okay. So you can take the screen, all the slides, no issues. Okay. Now, the other thing is, see this shorter duration of time. How do you know? This is 1 year's time. So we have the notion of tithi. Have you heard? What is tithi? It is duration. Date to nahi. How do you define tithi? Nahi. How many tithis are there in a month? Nahi. In a month. 30 tithis. Right? What is the duration of a tithi? One rotation around the earth. So see the first point here. The moon completes its orbit around the earth in 27.32 days. 30, no. Okay, look at the diagram now. I have put the earth here, and then this orbit is the moon's orbit, and assume that the red circle is the circle in which the sun moves. Okay. Now moon is at M1. What tithi is it? The sun and the moon are in the same line. Krishna Paksha nahi. Krishna Paksha to pura hai. This is the end of Amavasya. End of Amavasya. You understand? So this M2, see, I have shown the moon one half bright, one half dark, right? So moon after all receives light from the sun. It is not an object which has self-illumination. So it is receiving light. So that half is illuminated. As far as the observer in the earth is concerned, he cannot see the moon, and therefore this is Amavasya. Right? When the moon is on the other side, okay, so that half is illuminated, and therefore it is Paurnami. So the position of M1 represents end of Amavasya. The position M2 represents end of Purnima. Okay. Now between Amavasya and Purnima there is 180 degrees separation. So this you divide into 15. So each one will be 12 degrees. So therefore you have 15 tithis here and 15 tithis the other side. Okay. So Shukla Paksha consists of 15, Krishna Paksha consists of 15. Now the moon at M1, if it starts moving, okay, the arrow is shown here. So if it comes back to M1, okay, moon starts at M1, comes back to M1. So then 360 degrees are covered. So that takes around 27.32 days. Now by the time moon returns, will the sun be there? It would have moved, right? It would have moved about 30 degrees. So moon has to catch the sun. You understand? So that will take some more time, 2-3 more days, and therefore the duration of a lunar month is defined as time interval between two Amavasyas. So there is an Amavasya, the phase of the moon starts increasing, and then it becomes full moon, Purnima. Once again it comes back, the phase keeps decreasing, and then it becomes 0. That is the end of Amavasya. So this duration is what you call as lunar month. There is something called solar month, there is something called lunar month, and the lunar month is divided into 30 parts, and each part is called Tithi. So what is Tithi? So the time taken by the moon to lead the sun by 12 degrees. This is Tithi. Okay. So this is something which is unique to India. I wanted to tell you that. So many other civilizations had the notion of various other things. Every civilization has notion of month and so on. But the duration of Tithi and calculation of Tithi is something which is very, very important. No, wait. The Islamic calendar only to moon. हमारा तो सूरज भी है, चंद्रमा भी है. Our calendar is called lunisolar calendar. Many calendars are actually lunisolar calendars. Okay. In fact, even today there are about 15 different calendrical systems in the world, not one or two. Okay. So every civilization has its own calendar, and they still keep following, which are varying from one another in different aspects. So Rashi ka matlab, see, it has nakshatra is different. Nakshatra is connected with moon's position. Rashi is connected with sun's position. You are perhaps referring to what is called Lagna. That is a different thing. Janma Rashi. Okay. So anyway, so those things you ask Mahesha when his lecture. Let me complete. You reserve some questions. Now, let me just come. So quickly, let me come back to. So this is an interesting table which I thought I will show you. So this people have computed the time period in which the planets actually make their revolution. And then what they have done is, see, look at this table. So sun, so they have a large period called the Mahayuga, I told you, which is 43,20,000 years. And in that, see, so this sun making one revolution coming back to the same position in the star is a year. So, that is the standard reference. Now, this actually amounts to, see, there is something called sidereal period. Sidereal period means sun coming back to the same star. So, they have estimated this to be 365.25868. The modern value is 365.25636. See, so modern means today's value. I mean, this I am talking about 1500 years before. Now, moon, for instance, 27.32167 is 27.32166. So, which is correct to almost 5 decimal places. So, these are the values. That is why this John Playfair was mentioning, okay, that they had been making observations, okay, for very long number of years. So, this is the table. So, this is just to give you an idea as to how accurately they have been able to determine the sidereal periods at that point of time. Okay, this is table from Aryabhata's work around 500 AD. So, Aryabhata has actually composed his work in 4 parts: Geetika Pada, Ganita Pada, Kalakriya Pada and Gola Pada. So, all these numbers that I showed you is all stated in what is called Geetika Pada. So, Ganita Pada deals with mathematics, Kalakriya Pada deals with certain other things, and Gola Pada has to do with general description. Okay. I do not have time to discuss these in detail. This is just to give you an idea of how the text has been organized into various parts. Now, there is an interesting observation that has been made by Neelakantha. Okay. I will skip that, later I will touch upon that. Now, this notion of yuga, see, the very question that bothers any serious thinker is, how did we think of this large cycle, 43,20,000 years? What made them do? Why not 32,000 years? Why not 32 crore years? Right? You choose a certain time period, which means it should have some basis. Let me ask you, आप तो थोड़ा जानते हैं, why 27 stars? Stars तो बहुत है. ऐसा कुछ नहीं, वो स्टार कितना दूर पर है कि आज भी कोई किसी को मालूम नहीं. उनको कैसा पता चलेगा? The distance of the star cannot be estimated. Absolutely no way. वो कब किया? Beyond this period नहीं. And that estimate keeps changing actually. Nothing like 1500. ये distance तो अभी just a few hundred years ago, 100, 200 years ago, and that estimate is being actually changed. So, with more accurate measurements, you keep estimating, and in fact, today you know that the distance of the star keeps increasing. कोई भी star उधर नहीं है. They are moving at terrific speeds. So, how do you know the distance of the star? No way. Any other answer? Creative answer I want to just know. Why did they divide? Have this 27 stars. Why not 28 stars? Why not 32 stars? 27 wives of moon. वो उसका तो पत्नी नहीं है. That is a metaphorical way of saying. See, I have married myself to the job, you can say. I mean, what is marrying the job? You can't live without that. That's all it is. विजिबल तो इतना है, क्या बोलते हो, लाखों लाखों स्टार विजिबल है. स्टार विजिबल या क्या बोलती है? तो लाखों तो है. तुम्हारा आंख दिखता है कि नहीं? नो 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 नो, वो शेप तो राशि हो जाता है. क्लस्टर ऑफ स्टार, स्कॉर्पियो एंड सो ऑन. Why 27? No, no, no. All stars are relatively fixed. In fact, I thought you will guess from this. I gave this slide. You see, the time taken by the moon to go around is just 27, close to 27, and therefore they had made the number of stars 27. You understand? That is all it is. You divide the sky into 27. This has to do with no, this is artificial division which has to do with the motion of the moon. Why year is 365 days? Revolution Navahi. That is how, that is why I am just asking you this question. This division of sky into 12 parts or sky into 27 parts all have meaning. What does not have meaning is this January 31 days, February 28 days, March 31 days is all completely meaningless. Okay. Okay. So the kind of system that we have is all related to the motion around us. Somebody has thrusted his calendar upon us and the entire world, and this is a baseless calendar. Okay. But we have been compelled to follow that. But this is something which you can straight away see. Today what is the tithi? Nobody needs to tell me. I look at the sky and I tell you. You understand? What is the nakshatra today? I look at the sky and I will tell you. So whether it is January 31st or it is November 24th, somebody has to tell you. Right? If the entire world forgets what is today, then that's all finished. Next day cannot be found. But you can look at the sky and then tell your calendar any day. Okay. That is one thing which you have to keep in mind. Okay. The point I wanted to convey was Yujyante Asmin Grahaha iti Yugam. This long period 43,20,000 years has its basis on this thing. You see, they have made some sort of an estimate based on the period taken by the planet to go around. So if you find out the time periods of various objects, and if you want to find some common time period in which all of them will make some integral revolutions, it will not be exact, but it is as close as possible. Then we get a period like this that forms the basis for having this large period of time. Okay, so this you have to understand. So that is what is meant by Yujyante Asmin Grahaha iti Yugam. Yujyante means they come together. Okay, yoga means coming together. So this is what is the basis for this large period. And how do you know? There is a certain interesting mathematical technique which is called Kuttakara. So I will not explain. So I have seen to it that no mathematics will be touched upon in my lecture today. So then the next is, so this large period, they have been thinking of this large numbers even in the Vedic period. For instance, we have a passage in Veda. Shataya swaha, sahasraya swaha, yutaya swaha, niyutaya swaha, prayutaya swaha. Okay, this is a ahuti which is being described in Veda. So you have all the powers of 10 listed here. See, so up to 10 to the power 12. Okay, pararthaya swaha. This is a huge number. And there are this large number thinking of something of the powers of 10 which is going beyond 10 to the power 12 is something which has been there in our civilization. I told you earlier, the others could not think of more than a few thousand years. Whereas these Vedic people have always been thinking of very large numbers. And thinking of large is one thing, thinking of the smallest is another thing. And in fact, these two are sort of connected with each other. And therefore, the notion of infinity and the notion of zero. So, zero was also discovered here in India. Okay. So, this has to do with an intricate connection between the two. So, I will leave it at this point. Those who are interested, see, you note down this name, Charles Cephei. This fellow has written an interesting text. The name of the text is Zero. See, there are some mathematics teachers here. The name of the text is Zero, and then after zero he puts a colon, and then he says, the biography of a dangerous idea. You understand? The biography of a dangerous idea. Okay, the zero is not something which is very simple to introduce into the number system. So he has beautifully described that, and he clearly says how it was easy for Indians to discover it rather than other civilizations. How many of you know what is Panchanga? 5 elements. Tithi, Vara, Nakshatra, Yoga, Kara. Tithi is a duration, Vara is day, Nakshatra is again some duration, Yoga, kiska milna? Okay, that is also some duration, let us leave it at that, and Karana is also some duration, half of a Tithi. Anyway, these are some different, all of them are units of time, okay, just keep that in mind. Now, this is an interesting thing. I wanted to give you a flavor of how people can make things interesting. So, when you are writing a text, many of these texts they don't give the date of composition. वो कोई लिखते हैं छोड़ देते हैं, कभी कभी नाम भी नहीं जोड़ देते हैं. So, this has been the tradition. Okay. Some authors keep it as a puzzle. So, there is an interesting puzzle here. So, this puzzle is, he specifies some interesting data to you, and based on the data you have to find out when it was composed. So, this is a puzzle that has been given. He gives you some pieces of information, and from that information he asks you to figure out when it was composed. Yogaha here refers to that yoga, okay, in the Panchanga. Yogo masa krite samaha. Kriti means square. So, the first equation is, see, y is equal to m square. Yogo masa krite samaha. Then karahrito yogaha. See, karahritaha means, kara is, what is kara? Hath. So, hath can number 2, okay, 2. Karahritaha means divided by 2. When the yoga is divided by 2, that will give you the tithi. Okay, Karahrito yogaha tithi syat. Then Trighna varamitihi, you multiply tithi by 3. What does that give you? Varamitihi. See, Trighna tithihi varamitihi. Varasya mitihi, the measure of vara. Okay, vara means you have 7 days, right? Somavara, Mangalavara, and so on. Varamitihi, Tadardha Sadrisham, Bham. Bham means star, I told you. Half of that is the star. So, this is the information that he gives. And then he says, Sarva Yoge Punaha. When all these equations are satisfied, understand? So, you have a few equations. When all these are satisfied, and in this year, I completed the work. Okay. So, that day you have to just figure out. It is an interesting puzzle that he has given. Okay. And he says, Ganitadvayajna Kamala Prodbodhane Bhaskaram. That is the poetic aspect that he brings. This is a Shardula Vikridita meter. And there is, so those of you who have studied some Alankara Shastra, so you know that there is a beautiful Alankara here which is called Rupaka Alankara. Anyway, that I will leave now. So, you have some interesting things also integrated in the text, see, based on these different types of time periods that you have. See, so what is interesting to note is, so there is an interesting way of presenting even the date of composition, say, which will be quite charming and quite puzzling. Okay, so this is very important thing. Okay, so this is how creativity comes. After all, you can simply say, I composed it on this day, that day, right? That does not have any charm, right? So, here this is something which has to do with the new thing. I thought I will just introduce that to you. Okay, just see that. So how they can actually make the time measurement? Simply based on the shadow. You see that there is a stick like OX there, and you draw a circle around that. Okay. So whenever the shadow meets the circle, so you just make the measurement of the angle Z, the zenith. That will actually give you the time. So for that you need the equation below. See. So that equation has been given in some versified form in the text. So there you know it. All of you know at least sine function, cosine function, right? You may not know how to compute, but at least you would have seen in our school days, okay, all of you irrespective of the discipline. So sine theta, cos theta. So these are all that phi, see, some of you who are not from science background, this is phi, cos phi means the latitude of the place and delta means the declination of the sun. Okay. So this time is obtained by simply measuring Z. See, that Z is also actually not measured, it is based from the shadow. You see, you can get what is Z by the ratio of OX to OY. Okay, you know the length of the stick, you know the length of the shadow. So tan will give you the, so ratio of that will give you that. So experimentally, so how you can actually get the time? So suppose you have a clock, even for you to verify whether the clock is alright, you have to do this experiment. You understand? So pratyaksha is most important. The clock is something which you have set, it might have gone wrong, right? So that is the interesting thing. Okay, that is the only mathematics, okay, in this slide. Okay, now, so this sine function is very, very important and they have been dealing with in many, many ways. So I will skip this also and I am close to the concluding slides now. Just see this is a passage which is very interesting to note. This has to do with their understanding of the nature of science. This is what I wanted to highlight to you. I earlier also mentioned this. So Nilakantha was a 15th century astronomer and mathematician. His full name is Nilakantha Somayaji. Somayaji means one who performs Somayaga. See, not like today's Vajpayee. So Vajpayee means one who performs Vajpayee Yaga. Somayaji means one who performs Somayaga. Okay. Nowadays people just keep their names like that. वो त्रिवेदी लिखते हैं, द्विवेदी लिखते हैं, वो वेद का नाम भी उनको मालूम नहीं, राइट? सो जो दो वेद पढ़ा है वो द्विवेदी है, जो तीनों वेद पढ़ा है वो त्रिवेदी है. सो उनका नाम भी पता नहीं इनको, वो त्रिवेदी हो गया. So similarly this Vajpayee and so on. But in those days not like that. He was a Somayaji, but he was also a scientist. Understand this. So there is no conflict between this. Some people think that for you to be a scientist you have to abandon everything. So kuch nahi hai. So this is something which we have to understand. Anyway, so this Nilakantha in his commentary to Aryabhatiya, it is a magnificent commentary. He gives a beautiful simile. So this is something which you have to understand. As students of science, we need to know this. Yatha nishi paryatatam pradipadibihi swasamipah gataha pradeshaha yavadapeksham drisyaha evam sarvopi swaswasamipabhavaha kalaha yavadapeksham anumeyaha evam tithyadikam samyak anumiya kalam yapayanti. What does he say? As a person, see, Nishi paryatatam, Nishi means in the night, okay. Paryatatam pradipadibihi swasamipagataha pradeshaha yavadapeksham drishyaha. So you can carry a lamp, you can't carry a lamp and then say this lamp will illuminate the entire earth. Ye to nahi ho payega. So similarly he is saying, so you can't carry some parameters and then say forever I will be saying. So this is a beautiful simile that he is trying to bring in to convey, see, the importance of our approach to science. So we have certain limitations, and even so today, see how many of us know, say some of you would have heard of black holes and so on, right? So did the scientists know this? They are compelled to come up with something, right? Nobody thought of black hole existing of something object like that. So tomorrow it may change. That is the very nature of science. So falsification is something which is very important based on observation. The point I am trying to drive is this pratyaksha is something which is very important, and you can't make claims that this will be valid forever. This is completely wrong. Okay. So yatha nishi paryatatam pradipadibihi swasamipagataha pradeshaha yavadapeksham drisyaha evam sarvairapi swasamipabhavah kalaha means, so samipabhavah kalaha means prediction of something only for a certain period of time. So you will not be able to say that after 5000 years this is the day in which eclipse will occur. That is too much of confidence. Okay. So that doesn't really help. Who is there to verify? You can make claims and get away, right? So this swasamipa bhavah kalaha yavadapeksham anumeyaha. So kalaha anumeyaha. Understand? Time is something which is there, and you make some inferences, and based on the inferences you mark something on the timeline. Evam tithyadikam samyak anumiya kalam yapayanti. Okay. So kalam yapayanti. Tasmat bhagavataha aryabhatasya grahagati pramana tadanugrahaka tarka pratipadana paratvat. See, since I used certain terminologies yesterday, see, tarka and so on, you see. So anumana tarka, you understand? Bhagavataha aryabhatasya. So he is just referring to Aryabhata with great reverence. Okay. Grahagati pramana tadanugrahaka tarka. Grahagati pramanam. See, the rate at which it moves. So the anugrahaka tarka means, so why do you say that this is the motion? I have to justify. That is what is tarka, as I told you yesterday. Pratipadana paratvat sankhya bhage tatparya bhavat. In fact, in the specification of the parameters, okay, so he is not keen. He is keen in only making you understand the procedure which has to be adopted by you in determining, okay, not the numbers. So this is a very, very powerful statement. Udaharanatvenaiva tatpadarshanam ataha swayam muktanam tasam paraspara virodhaha na doshaya. A very beautiful way of reconciling. So some astronomer like Bhaskara gives you a slightly different parameter. Aryabhata gives you a different parameter. Lalla gives you a different parameter. Munjala gives you a different parameter. So he is asking you, so if Aryabhata is knowing everything, then why should not the parameter be taken forever? So he says no, that is not valid. Okay. So these are valid at a point of time and for a given period of time. Okay. So that is the point. Paraspara virodhaha means contradiction between the parametrical values is not to be considered as a dosha. Okay, it is actually a guna. Okay, udaharananthi bahudha pradarshyamanam na dushyati. This is a very powerful statement. Okay, now we are close to the end of the talk. So to give you a larger picture, what was the conception of the universe? So you look at the Aristotelian universe. The Aristotelian universe, so you see the earth at the center, then we have moon, then we have Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. And what is important here is, so they said that all these objects must be moving on spherical shells. Okay, and they have to be moving with constant speed. These two imposition was laid down. Okay, so earth is at the center, which is stationary. Heavens are made up of crystalline shells. They are all shells. Okay, shell means a fixed object. So at some distances, etc. This is how they conceived of the universe. Since it is a transparent shell, you can see the other object also. This is how, and they have to move only on the shell. Okay. they have to be moving on an object which is absolutely symmetrical, which means it can be only sphere, and they have to move with constant velocity. These two were the constraints that they imposed on the terrestrial motion. This is their universe. Then, of course, hey, तुम्हारा नाम बोलो? Sweetie. The Sweetie was asking, how do I know? Okay, that sun is moving around the earth, she is asking. I am asking her, how do you know that earth is moving around the sun? So, this picture of geocentric to heliocentric. So, heliocentric means sun at the center, geocentric is this. So, how did this understanding emerge? So, what are the major contributors? Okay, was there some intermediary stage? This is what we are going to address now. So, this Tycho Brahe was an important person in between, and then so he has come up with a certain picture which is intermediary picture, in which you neither say earth is at the center nor say sun is at the center. Okay, so you say that there is an anybody knows what is Tycho's picture? So you say that all the planets are moving around the sun, okay, and the sun is moving around the earth. Okay, so this is the picture. Yeah, we'll do. So this is the picture that they have. Okay, so this Tycho's picture is this. So this picture of Tycho played a very crucial role, and this Tychonic system which we call today, see, you see this picture now. So here you have the earth, and around the earth is the moon, and around that you have a bigger orbit which is sun's orbit, and around that you have two small circles which are the orbits of Mercury and Venus, and these orbits are the orbits of the planets. So this is that of Mars, Jupiter, and then this larger circle is Saturn, and then you have a much larger circle which is the circle of stars. This is the imaginary picture. This picture was actually given before Tycho Brahe by Nilakantha. This is the most that can be done by naked eye observation, nothing beyond this. So this picture which was given by Tycho Brahe was actually proposed by Nilakantha somewhat earlier. Okay. This Copernicus normally, whom we associate with this motion of heliocentric planetary motion, did not come up with anything which is reality based on observation, but it has to do with some sort of a speculation. Okay, it has nothing to do with observation. But the interesting point is, the Nilakantha who came up with this picture brought this picture to us based on observation of a physical phenomenon, and he argues clearly why this is to be taken by us. So specifying something which may be correct by some speculation is very different from arguing something which is based on observation. Okay, so that is the difference between this Tycho and Copernicus. What is these are the statements that we have. See, he argues beautifully. Swabimbasya vikshepaha. Vikshepaha means this latitudinal deflection. Okay, the planets are moving in orbits which are slightly inclined to the orbit of the ecliptic. Vikshepa means that separation. Okay, so it has to happen by its own motion and not the motion of something else. Okay, and there is a very, very clear statement. See, this red one you have to read. Tayoho brahmanavrittena nabhuhu kabali kriyate tato bahireva sadabhuhu, which means Tayoho means Mercury and Venus. It is very difficult to observe them. See, Mercury and Venus are very close to Sun, right? You can't even see for long periods. So Jupiter, Mars, you can see they are separated, okay, huge orbits. But the orbits of Mercury and Venus are very close to Sun. So only for few hours at most you can see, okay, in 2 months, 3 months time. So that has been observed very, very carefully by Nilakantha, and he comes up with this argument, okay, which is a clinching statement, and he categorically states that their orbits do not circumscribe the earth. Tayoho Brahmanavrittena Nabhuhu Kabali Kriyate. Okay. So this actually gives a very beautiful line of thinking that has gone in making various discoveries. Okay. Though Nilakantha came with this, okay, and we 30 years back, myself and a couple of other researchers, as I entered into research for the first time, we discovered this in the text, and we tried to publish a paper, and that paper was sent for referring to somebody in US, and that person said, no, these people's interpretation is all not correct. Okay, the journal editor decided that the referee has refused and therefore we can't publish your paper. So then we wrote a rejoinder saying that his interpretation is wrong, so he has missed out some points. And then he responds, you see, this is interesting. But Nilakantha has conceived of in terms of the traditional cosmology in which the inferior planets all circle around the earth. So this is in spite of the statement, you understand? All circle around the earth means even Mercury and Venus. He clearly says that their orbit does not circumscribe. But he is not willing to explain. I hope my explanation is both clear and convincing. We wrote back to him saying that, no, this is incorrect. And then he further says, see, I apologize for the delay. What is it? We seem to be getting into of mutual incommunicability. So the author of the heliocentric paper claimed that, okay, so I did not respond to the theory, while I must now claim that they did not understand my criticism. See, so this went on for almost 1 year. So the point I am trying to convey is, so our own scriptures, our own language, so with scientific background, so we come to some conclusion understanding that. But this is something which is not considered by our editors and they decided not to publish. Then we create some ruckus and then finally it was published anyway. So there are some interesting things which are yet to be explored, and this concluding remarks what I wanted to say was, see, the language in which the problems are described may change, the style of presentation may change, the mathematical tools employed so does change, the accuracy with which we can determine may also change. But this does not make all the text irrelevant. Okay, this we have to understand. So that is what one needs to understand very clearly. It is not obsolete. There are certain statements which are quite thrilling to us if we actually try and go and discover some of them. So it is actually the thought processes, as I was mentioning to you yesterday. So what has made them think? The art of discovery is to be discovered. So which is very different. Okay, we have been channelized to think only one particular way, but it is the natural creativity that is inherent in a human being that is to be nurtured, and that can be nurtured only when we try to expose them in different ways of thinking. Okay? So this prototypical way of doing things universally is not a great idea. Okay, so this, see, having only one calendar, it is like throughout the world everybody dresses only one particular way. ये कैसा होगा? इसमें क्या है? Every house has to be same. What is there? There is no need. So this is something which we need to understand. Okay, and studying in itself, these texts are quite fascinating and challenging and intellectually rewarding too. So what you saw is a glimpse of the Indian astronomy without getting into the mathematical details. The study of astronomy, like any other branch of IKS, got systematically and strategically disrupted, especially through the interventions of the system of education. Notwithstanding the work carried out by a few dedicated scholars, especially since independence, we are yet to achieve a comprehensive understanding of the concepts, techniques and methodologies. So, this is because see, much of the study of IKS has been carried out in a voluntary basis, and I am so happy that this IIT Kharagpur has established a center for IKS, okay, Center for Excellence. So, these things will enable us to have a comprehensive picture, and while studying these texts, I wanted to tell very clearly that we should not make any kind of exaggeration. That will only be counterproductive. So, Puranamityeva nasadhu sarvam nachapikavyam navamityavadyam santah parikshya anyatarad bhajante mudhah parapratyaya neya buddhi. Okay, this has to be kept in mind. So, downright condemnation is also not correct, and which some people have been doing. So, and now we have come to a certain stage where we have reached a stage that there is something which is interesting here and we need to look into. Okay. So, with these words, I thank the organizers for giving this.